Pip Hoy. Before I commence, I would like to acknowledge and pay tribute to the Noongar Whadjuk people and their elders, the traditional custodians of the land on which we stand today. So my piece is Bloodlines. There are two parts of this story. The first part is the inspiration behind the installation itself, and then the second part of the techniques that I used. For this talk, I'd like to really focus more on the inspiration, and if I have time, Gail, and if there's an interest, I can tell you about the techniques, you know, the fabrics, the colour combinations and so on, if you're interested. So the inspiration behind this piece, there's a little bit of a backstory, starting with my friend Viv. Can you put your hand up, Viv? Thank you. So my husband and I and our son, we moved to Perth about 5 years ago, and I was just doing a short course at Tresillian, and I met Viv, who took pity on me, friendly but friendless, and she invited me to join a group of ladies who meet every week or every fortnight to sew sanitary pads and send them off to women in Papua New Guinea and some parts of Western Australia. And so Viv, having figured out that I knew how to use a sewing machine, said, you know, Pip, why don't you come along and join the group? You know, we're all retirees or semi-retired. And I thought, well, I don't have any friends, so I better go along. And of course, you have no idea what to expect when you go into a group like that. And I was very pleasantly surprised. These women are fantastic. They're strong, opinionated, talented, bright, intelligent women who I just love spending time with. So there we were every week sewing these sanitary pads, and along the way I started to learn quite a bit about menstrual poverty, and it's a real thing. And you know, it made me realise how lucky I've been in my life that it's not something I've ever had to think about. But for many, many, many women in the world, it is, you know, it's a real issue. So I wanted to introduce the inspiration, the things that I was learning from these women into my work. So I had my first solo exhibition in Perth last year, and I created a body of work which I called the 28 Days series, and I exhibited that work at Tresillian Art Centre in one single room. And that was my nod and my acknowledgement of the women who I had met at this group. Anyway, so then came the WAFTA this exhibition, and for me it was a no-brainer. I wanted to extend on the 28 Days series and extend the work that I had already been doing and really step it up and do something a bit more eye-catching, maybe? Just more significant. Really, it was just more significant. So the theme of the work was crossover, which for me was a bit of a no-brainer because I think that with this work, the theme is it crosses cultures, it crosses boundaries, it crosses geography, it crosses all kinds of things. It doesn't cross gender, but it does cross over into across the spectrum of women in the world. So within this piece, I use textiles from different parts of the world, and again, I can go into that later with anyone who asks. It was a piece that for me was absolutely something that I needed to communicate. So just going through the catalogue, I've explained how this work builds on a earlier body of work. My three techniques were quilting, applique, and deconstructed collage. So again, for those of you who don't know, for the entrance into this exhibition, we were limited to using just three techniques. And so mine are quilting, applique, and deconstructed collage. And so for me, what I was doing is I was exploring a uniquely female narrative across two menstrual cycles. So in this work, there are 56 pieces, and the two menstrual cycles are indicated by these dots. So there's 56 pieces, and that would be considered one piece. Combining a range of new and vintage textiles, give voice to feminine interconnectedness across a variety of cultures. So again, all women across the world all have this experience, and you know, there's textiles from Thailand, there's some textiles from Indonesia, there's textiles from UK and so on. I reflected on the enormous impact of a simple pregnancy test because of course all of this is about the reproductive cycle. And so these vertical lines represent a pregnancy test. And of course, every woman here knows that the results of a pregnancy test are huge. So it could be positive and you were desperately waiting for that child to come along, so it's great news. Or, oh my God, I desperately don't want to be pregnant, and here it is. And then, of course, the reverse. And so, these vertical lines have, a great deal of significance for women who do or don't want to be pregnant. And then it says here, in stitching over the circles, I questioned who and what determines the fate of the eggs that nest within the womb. So you can see these little circles here, and of course, highlighted here. It's supposed to be representing the eggs. And it's at this point that I will reveal that as I was creating this piece was when the drama in the US was unfolding about the Roe versus Wade and the reversal of that legal argument. Thank you, Gail. So as it says in the catalogue, through bloodlines I recognise my internal response to the compliant arrangement of the feminine sitting under the arc of masculine influence, and I'll come back to that. And I also saw strong women working together and holding the line between the need to protest and the call to nature, regardless of their perceived position within the patrilineal society. So in other words, I was having my own response to this, and I don't want to judge anybody in terms of Roe versus Wade and that whole thing around what their own feelings are, where they stand on that issue. I just was noticing my own response. And my own response, was pretty angry. I was quite angry. And I've explained to some people here that I actually broke quite a few sewing needles as I was creating this. I was in a bit of a hurry because there was a deadline and I need to meet the deadline, but I also noticed I was working really vigorously because I was frustrated. And then the other part was, how I arranged the pieces. When I set out to make this piece, I didn't know exactly how I was going to arrange them. I had a rough idea, but anyone here who is an artist, whom quite a few of you are, you have a bit of an idea, but it morphs and grows. And so I created this piece knowing that it would roughly look like this. But as I laid it out on the floor, I started on the floor, I just got this sense of this organised structure, and I thought, is it women who are being compliant? Or is it women who are holding, together, holding strongly together? And then this idea of protesting versus nurture, and it is a problem for women. If you do have children, do you have time to go out and march on the streets and protest and so on? It's a challenge. And then I had it all lined up, and I thought it didn't feel complete to me because there was this feeling of this overarching male influence. Men telling us how to manage our bodies. And I'm sorry for the men in the room. I'm not angry with you, but I do feel this sense of this male dominance over women, and particularly with the Roe versus Wade. It's such a uncomfortable moment in history. And so I did that. Yeah. And then I thought, right, now I've got my message across. And we're at the opening night, I'll reveal a little story. At opening night for this exhibition, there was a man, a husband of one of the other artists who's participating. He came up to me and said, Pip, I've really got to find out. There's a whole bunch of us who've been asking, what's going on with this? And he said, I've got to ask you. I was like, go on. And he said, is it a willy jizzing? Is it a willy jizzing? And I had my son with me at the exhibition opening, and he's looking at me like, Mum, is it? And I realised I'd never spoken to my son. Anyway, I turned to this man and I turned to my son and I said, actually, yes, it is. And I have to say also this particular piece was reversed. It was the other way, and it looked so phallic. I thought, no, there's such nice people who come to this exhibition. I can't do that. So I turned it around the other way, but of course now here I am telling you, I just sort of should have just left it as it was. It really is a willy jizzing. It's obviously a bit of a statement, but it's just how I felt at the time, and it's a strong piece, and I think, like all the artists here, there's a message that we want to get across, and for me this was the message that I wanted to get across. And then back to the women who I met at the sewing group, I think the women at the sewing group would probably appreciate this given some of their opinions. So that's the inspiration for this particular work, and I'm very, very grateful to Viv and in the sewing group. So I can talk about the techniques if you'd like, but otherwise, if I've probably run out of time, if there's any questions.
Could you say a bit about the colours, Pip, and how you chose those?
Yeah, so the colours, could I give that to you? Thank you, Gail, thank you. I was painting, so way back in my history, I did work with textiles, and then I moved to painting, and now I've gone back to textiles. Through the time that I was painting, I kind of really learnt that my superpower, from a creative sense, is colour. And my process around colour is actually quite analytical. Is left brain, right brain, the other side, the non-creative side. I'm very analytical. So in bringing together colour, I always start with a fixed number of colours. So I think this one is 14 colours, and it was literally half pattern, half plain. And then to mix them all up, I then knew that I would have three proportions. So there would be a pad that's cut in half, so one colour on one side, one colour on the other side. A pad that would be cut at a third, one colour one side, one colour the other side. And pads that would be just one single fabric. And so I cut them up according to that process, mixed them up so that there was balance. And then I had the stripes. I'd have too narrow, too medium, too thick, too narrow, too medium, too thick. And similarly with the colours, there were 5 or 6 colours of each of the circles. And so then I just laid them out. I just went through an analytical process. And then laying them out, that was when it was just, I had to do it by eye. I had to make sure that, the orange kind of pops, so it has to be, spread around. The black kind of recedes, so that needs to be distributed evenly. And the other thing with colour is I knew that, it looks best when I move from light to dark. So within those 14 colours, there's light through to dark evenly across that colour spectrum when I'm starting just with the fabrics. And so that's what allows then the balance across the entire piece. But it's an analytical, structured process. Thank you.